World War II is certainly the most devastating war humanity has ever faced, with over 56 million casualties and an additional 28 million from famine and war-related disease. What really pains even more is the fact that this war was not so long ago, and many who experienced the terrible Holocaust and Holodomors are still alive today, mentally or physically disabled, with very few to no remaining family members to their own knowledge. Let's take a perspective look at the occurrences and major events taking place during the 6-year and 1-day period. Chapter 1. The Beginning. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was once a great power, as many of you already know. Being separated from the rest of Europe by Doggerland's submersion tens of thousands of years before, Britain sought to conquer the New World and obstruct colonies in Africa and Asia rather than their neighbours like France, its greatest rivalry. This situation wasn't always like this, though, and after multiple treaties, it came to be what I am currently explaining. France wasn't like this, and Napoleon Bonaparte conquered much of the Italian peninsula and Iberian Peninsula along with more Indo-European nations. Prussia then rose, with the same objective of France, to conquer the states of mainland Europe. This rivalry later transformed into a war, of which Prussia won and France was extremely weakened. Skipping forth, Prussia had transformed into the Second German Reich, and World War I took place between Germany, Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire against the Entente powers, comprising mainly of France, the United Kingdom and the Russian Empire. The Entente powers ultimately succeeded in battle, with the assistance of Italy, the United States of America now blossoming in prosperity, and more. Now we finally reach the times of World War II. After Poland's division in World War I, France and the UK decided to sign a treaty, deciding they would protect Poland in times of need, such as war. The Russian Empire transformed into the Soviet Union, or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and the Second Reich had transformed into the Third Reich, of which I assume you're all fairly familiar with. On September 1st, 1939, German forces arrived at the Polish peninsula of Westerplatte and began to enforce control over the region. The German forces formed a garrison and all shot simultaneously, commending the beginning of something extremely horrible and unforgettably traumatizing. Adolf Hitler was once an art student before he was kicked out for poor performance. He later became the ruthless dictator of fascist power Third Reich and authorized the Holocaust. His reasoning for the Holocaust was simple: to target Jews. Many Israelis had integrated into Europe, specifically Poland, and Adolf figured that the Israelis were destroying the economy. It is also widely recognized that Hitler had multiple health problems, such as infertility and Parkinson's disease, mental health problems such as borderline personality disorder, and addictions to dangerous substances, usually only allowed for medicinal purposes. Chapter 2. Battle of Sedan. After an extremely small period of time, France fell to the Germans, and France was partitioned into Nazi German-controlled land and Vichy France, a new puppet government with the same regime and views as the Third Reich. It was quite anticipated that something of the sort might happen. To oppose a German attack on Belgium, British and French forces garrisoned in the Benelux region in 1940, while the Germans used this as an advantage to conquer through the dense forest of the Andres. Passing through the Maginot Line, the Battle of Sedan took place over a period of 2 days, eventually resulting in French defeat. On the 10th of July, a dictatorship was rewarded to Marshal Philippe Pétain, and this parliamentary setting was established in the free zone of Vichy, hence the naming structure, Vichy France. By this point in time, Nazi Germany had transformed into a military legion, with newfound ownership over France's many colonies across West Africa and Southeast Asia, and one less allied power to remain feared of. On September 27th of the same year, the Imperial Japanese Empire and fascist power Italy conducted an agreement dubbed the Tripartite Pact and was intended to deter the United States of America from involvement in the war. Chapter 3. Project Normandy. Project Normandy was the code name for the battle of which the Allies succeeded in deforming Germany, and the Imperial Japanese Empire was the final surviving participant, led by Emperor Hirohito. Normandy is also dubbed as D-Day, due to being the date involving the most deaths of any other in World War II, and is something to be referred to more casually. On June 6th, 1944, a gigantic operation of Allied powers' naval, aerial and infantry forces, split into 5 sections, infiltrated the beaches of Normandy, France, under the rule of the Germans. Ultimately, 156,000 Allied troops were supplied in total, and 425,000 troops in conjunction with the Allied forces and the Axis forces sadly met their demise. The Holocaust had now come to an end. After the Imperial Japanese were left as the sole Axis power, they began to seek out subcontinental imperialization. They already controlled much of extremely populated China, Indonesia, and the entire Korean peninsula, which was eventually partitioned between the Soviet Union and the United States of America in the aftermath of World War II, the Cold War rivalry to be the sole world superpower. After attempting to invade the United States territory of Hawaii, which hadn't been declared a state yet, the United States bombed the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The bombs were constructed with highly enriched uranium-235, meaning the bombs were nuclear, and the city was declared uninhabitable for many years to come afterwards. The Axis powers eventually fell, and the Allies reigned victorious.